I do contract repair work for a company that maintains way stations and traffic sensors along rural interstates, which basically means I spend a lot of time alone on highways at hours normal people are sleeping. This happened in March of last year on a stretch of interstate between two small towns in western Kansas. I won't say which one because I still drive that route sometimes and I don't really want the attention, but if you've ever done long haul through that part of the state, you know what those roads feel like after midnight. It was a Tuesday and I'd been on the clock since a little after 8 in the morning. One of the stations had a faulty camera and a temperature sensor that kept tripping alarms, and of course everything took longer than it should have, so I didn't leave the site until close to 11:30 at night. By the time I got back on the highway, my eyes were burning from staring at screens all day, and the coffee in my thermos tasted like it had been brewed when the station opened in the 80s. The weather was clear, no wind, no rain, just that wide open empty sky, and a dark ribbon of road stretching straight ahead forever. Traffic was basically non-existent. Every 15 or 20 minutes, a semi would pass going the other way, throwing a wave of air and noise through the cab. But otherwise, it was just the hum of my tires and the faint whistle of air seeping around the door seal. About 40 minutes into the drive, I saw something in the distance that made me take my foot off the gas without even thinking about it. Way up ahead on the right shoulder, there was a faint strobing of red, not from a police cruiser or a tow truck, but from the tiny hazards of a passenger car. As I got closer, I could see the outline of a dark sedan angled slightly toward the ditch. Both front doors open, trunk closed, no interior lights on. The hazards ticked on and off, splashing the back of the car and a section of grass in a weak red pulse. My first thought was that someone had hit a deer and moved the car off the road. It's not unusual out there. I slowed to about 50 and scanned for movement. No one was standing by the car. No one was waving. The driver's seat looked empty as I passed it in my peripheral vision, but it's hard to tell at night at highway speed. I considered pulling over, but something about the way the car was sitting bothered me. It was too neat. No skid marks, no debris, just this perfectly parked sedan with both front doors hanging open and no sign of anyone. I checked my mirrors as I went by. That's when I saw him. There was a man standing in the grass behind the car, in the narrow strip between the shoulder and the barbed wire fence. The only reason I noticed him at all was because the hazard lights caught the reflective strips on his jacket every few seconds. He wasn't facing the car. He wasn't looking at the road. He was turned away, staring out into the dark field beyond the fence like there was something out there only he could see. His arms hung straight down at his sides. He didn't move as my truck blew past. He didn't flinch at the rush of air or the noise. He could have been a mannequin for how still he was. Every instinct in me that had been politely saying, maybe you should check on whoever crashed, suddenly switched to absolutely not. I kept driving. After half a mile, I grabbed my phone off the passenger seat and called the State Patrol non-emergency number that's programmed into it. I told the dispatcher there was a disabled vehicle at such and such mile marker with both doors open and a man standing behind it acting strange. She asked if he seemed injured. I said no. That was the weird part. He seemed completely fine. Just wrong somehow. She said they'd send a unit to check it out and thanked me for calling. I hung up, feeling like I'd done my good deed for the night. 10 minutes later, I saw headlights in my mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it. Even out there, you aren't truly the only vehicle forever. But the headlights were approaching fast, a little too fast, given the posted speed limit and the way most people baby their cars on those long, boring stretches. I nudged the cruise control up a couple of miles an hour and watched. The headlights kept gaining. When they got close enough that I could make out the shape around them, my stomach dropped. It was a dark sedan. Same height, same narrow headlights, same faintly bluish tint to the bulbs. There are thousands of cars that look like that, I know. But when you've just passed one sitting on the shoulder with its doors open and an empty driver's seat, your brain doesn't care about statistical odds. The sedan closed the remaining distance in seconds and settled in directly behind me. Not tailgating aggressively, not backing off either. Just locking itself onto my bumper like it had been towed there. I tapped my brakes lightly to flash my lights at him. The universal signal of back off, buddy. The sedan didn't change position. I changed lanes, more to test him than anything else. He changed lanes with me. After a minute of that, my heart rate had spiked enough that I was fully awake. I turned off cruise control and rested my right foot on the accelerator, ready to move. The highway ahead was empty, a flat black strip flanked by darker fields on either side. No exits, no ramps, no overpasses for several miles, just us. The sedan suddenly slid out into the left lane. For a moment I thought he was finally going to pass. Instead, he moved up just enough that our front bumpers were roughly aligned, then matched my speed exactly. I refused to look at him at first. I kept my eyes locked on the road and my hands at 10 and 2. I could feel his presence beside me like heat through glass. After about 30 seconds of that, curiosity got the better of me, and I flicked my eyes sideways for a second. The driver's window was down about halfway. In the dim glow from our headlights, I could see the side of a man's face. Same reflective stripes on the jacket I'd seen on the shoulder. Same still posture. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at the road. His head was tilted slightly toward the passenger seat, like he was listening to someone sitting there and making a point of not breaking eye contact with them. Only from my angle I could see the passenger seat clearly, and it was empty. There was no one in that car but him. My skin crawled. I looked forward again and gripped the wheel tighter. He drifted closer to my lane, not enough to make contact, just enough that if I let the truck wander even a foot to the left, we'd be trading paint. It felt deliberate, like he was testing how much pressure it would take to make me react. I eased my foot down and let my speed climb. The truck hummed a little louder as the engine worked. The sedan stayed glued to me. 80, 85. We were well into the zone where a mistake meant more than a ticket, and he was still right there, perfectly matched. The road curved gently to the right ahead. On the outside of that curve was a shallow but long drop, the kind you don't really notice in the day because it slopes out gradually into a field. At night, all you see are the reflectors on the posts, and then nothing beyond. If he nudged me there, I'd go over with enough momentum to roll. I don't know if that was his plan, but that's what my brain supplied in high definition. A quarter mile before the curve, I made my move. I took my foot completely off the gas. Not a tap on the brakes, nothing that would light me up and give him a cue, just a total release. My truck started to decelerate. For a few seconds, he didn't react, still focused on whatever invisible person he thought he was talking to. That gave me just enough of a gap. He drifted ahead by maybe half a car length. I snapped the wheel slightly right, dropping back fully into my original lane, then slammed my foot back down on the accelerator. The truck lunged forward. The sudden change in momentum made my stomach flip, but I kept my hands steady. I shot out of that side-by-side position and put as much road between us as I could. In my mirror, I saw his headlights shrink. For a second, I thought he'd chase, but he didn't. He stayed in the left lane, still pointed straight ahead, still moving, just smaller. When the next exit finally appeared, one of those lonely ramps that leads to a gas station and a few houses, I took it. I parked under the brightest light on the lot and went inside, hands still buzzing with leftover adrenaline. I told the overnight clerk there was a guy in a sedan driving like a lunatic who'd been trying to box me in. He shrugged like he'd heard stranger things and offered me a free coffee. I took it and sat at a table by the window, watching the road for the next 20 minutes. The sedan never passed. State Patrol called me back the next morning. They said they'd sent a trooper to the mile marker I'd mentioned. There was no disabled vehicle there, no skid marks, no sign of anything on the shoulder. I know what I saw on that drive. I know what I saw standing behind that car in the pulsing red light. And I know that at some point, between me passing him and me calling it in, he found a way to get back on the road and catch up to me in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. I don't pull over for stranded cars anymore. If I see hazards now, I make the call and keep my wheels moving. People like to argue online about whether stories like this are overreactions, whether you're morally obligated to stop and check on people. All I can say is that when you've actually been there, alone on a black strip of highway, with nothing but your headlights and your gut, the choice feels very different. You don't get background music or a narrator explaining who is dangerous and who isn't. You just get a few seconds of a stranger's behavior to go on, and if the hair on the back of your neck is standing up, you listen to it or you don't go home. I used to work nights for a regional courier that handled medical samples between hospitals, the kind of stuff that has to arrive by a certain time or it's worthless. Blood, biopsy tissue, boxes of vials with handwritten labels, all in hard plastic coolers stacked in the back of a beat-up company SUV. The pay wasn't great, but the routes were mostly interstate, and they left me alone as long as I hit my delivery windows. This happened on a run from Omaha to Des Moines in late November of 2020. It was one of those nights where the air feels wet, but it's not actually raining, and the asphalt shines under your headlights like it's been polished. There was construction on the usual route, so my GPS had me on a parallel highway for about an hour, 2 lanes each way, with a grassy median in the middle, and not much else around besides fields and the occasional clump of trees. It was a little after 1 in the morning when I pulled off at a truck stop to top off my tank and grab caffeine. I spent about 10 minutes inside, stretched my legs, made some small talk with the cashier about the game that had been on earlier, then headed back out feeling slightly more human. The lot was quiet, a couple of semis idling, one pickup by the air pump, and one dark sedan parked way off to the side facing the road. I didn't think much of it. People sleep in their cars at places like that all the time. I got back on the highway heading east. For the first 15 minutes, it was blissfully uneventful. Cruise control at 65, true crime podcast murmuring out of the speakers, no headlights in front of me, none behind. Then, out of nowhere, there they were. A pair of headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, small at first, then growing. Nothing unusual there. Someone leaving the same stop later than me. I watched them automatically, the way you do at night when you're half on autopilot. I expected them to pass. Instead, they closed the distance until they were maybe 2 car lengths behind me, and then just stayed there. No attempt to go around, no backing off. Just locked in that exact position. I tried to ignore it for a few miles. Not everyone likes passing at night. Some drivers feel safer hanging back. But the longer it went on, the more it felt like the unseen driver was staring at the back of my head through the windshield. I tapped my brakes lightly to flash my lights, a polite, "Hey, either pass or back off." The headlights didn't budge. I slowed 5 miles an hour. They slowed with me. I sped back up. They sped up. At that point, my heart rate kicked up a notch. I shut off the podcast so I could hear the road better. The only sound was the steady hum of my tires and the faint hiss of air seeping past the door seals. The highway ahead was empty. The sky was a flat gray-black sheet with no visible moon. I tried changing lanes. The SUV drifted into the left lane. The headlights followed. I drifted back. So did they. Whoever was behind me wasn't just distracted or timid. They were deliberately mirroring whatever I did, and for what felt like no good reason. After another couple of minutes of that game, the headlights suddenly shifted. The car behind me slid into the left lane and began to pull up beside me. I tensed without meaning to. The SUV felt suddenly very small compared to this unknown mass of metal drawing even with my driver's side door. I kept my eyes forward for as long as I could, but the urge to glance over won. The other car was a dark sedan, maybe a mid-size. The windows weren't tinted, but the interior was dark enough that I couldn't see much detail. I could make out the silhouette of a driver, hands high on the wheel, shoulders hunched slightly like they were leaning forward. They didn't look back at me. They didn't even flick their eyes in my direction. Their head was tilted down and to the right in a way that didn't make sense for watching the road. It almost looked like they were staring at their own lap, while somehow keeping the car in a perfect straight line. I looked forward again and realized the danger wasn't that they were beside me. It was what they were doing with that position. The sedan wasn't passing. It was matching my speed exactly, holding itself in a spot that made it impossible for another car to merge between us from either lane. We were approaching one of those short on-ramps that comes out of nowhere in the middle of nowhere, the kind that's basically a suggestion of a lane. Barely enough room for someone to get up to speed before they're forced to join or bail out onto the shoulder. There was a car coming down that ramp. I could see its headlights bouncing on the uneven concrete. If it merged at the wrong time, it would end up trying to fit into a space that the sedan beside me was effectively blocking on purpose. I eased off the gas. The sedan eased off with me. I sped up. It sped up. The oncoming headlights from the ramp got closer. The driver on that ramp had no idea there was someone playing games in the main lanes. They were just doing what you're supposed to do, match speed and slide into the nearest gap. Only there was no gap. I realized if something didn't change, that merging car was either going to slam into the sedan beside me or panic and jerk the wheel into me instead. Neither option ended well, so I did the only thing I could think of. I punched the accelerator hard enough that the engine whined and the SUV leapt forward. For a split second, my tires felt light on the damp surface, and then they caught. I shot ahead of the sedan by a full car length. As soon as I did, I yanked the wheel slightly to the right, leaving the left lane open. The sedan had a choice to make in about half a second. Either continue mirroring me and risk getting rear-ended by a merging stranger, or finally break the pattern and adjust like a normal driver. It chose the latter. It dropped back, letting the merging car slip cleanly into the left lane. Ahead of it, I watched the whole thing unfold in my mirrors, heart hammering. The merging driver never even hesitated. They had no idea how close that almost was. After they were safely in and heading off at a normal pace, the sedan behind them slid back into the right lane and settled onto my tail again. Closer this time, I'd broken whatever little game they were playing, and apparently that didn't sit well. I wasn't interested in figuring out how they planned to escalate. The next exit sign finally appeared, one of those tiny white ones announcing a town you'd miss if you blinked. I took it without signaling until the last second, cutting across the lane in a smooth but decisive motion. The sedan had to either follow me onto the ramp or continue straight. It hesitated just long enough that when it did decide, it was too late. It flew past the exit going straight. I watched it shrink in the distance as I rolled down the ramp, my hands still shaking on the wheel. At the bottom of the ramp, there was a closed gas station, a dark diner, and a sheriff's cruiser parked nose in under a streetlight in front of what had to be the town's tiny municipal building. I pulled into the lot and parked a few spaces away from the cruiser. The deputy inside looked up from whatever he was doing as I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to get my breathing under control. Eventually, I got out, walked over, and told him in probably more detail than he wanted about the car that had been shadowing me and trying to box me in. He listened, nodded, and said he'd put a call out to the next county over. I have no idea if they ever found that driver or if they'd even be able to justify a stop if they did. On paper, it was just a car that didn't pass when it should have. No law against being creepy, but I know what that felt like behind the wheel. It wasn't random. It wasn't some nervous teenager afraid to overtake a stranger at night. It was deliberate. They knew exactly how close to get, exactly how to sit in my blind spot, exactly how to keep me from having an easy escape. After that night, I kept taking highway runs for a while, but I changed how I did it. I started avoiding late departures when I could. I stopped assuming the car behind me was just another tired commuter. And I learned that out there, in the dead hours when everyone sane is asleep, you don't owe anyone the benefit of the doubt when they've already ignored all the rules that keep people alive at 70 miles an hour. People love to talk tough about what they would have done, how they would have slammed on their brakes or forced the other guy to back down. But the reality is different when there's nothing but darkness on either side of you, and the only thing keeping the people you're hauling samples for out of a lawsuit is you staying upright and on the road. You don't get style points on the highway. All you get is home or not home. That night, I picked home, and if that made me overly cautious in every night shift after, I'm fine with that. Even now, years and jobs later, I can feel my shoulders tighten anytime a pair of headlights hangs a little too perfectly behind me for a little too long. I never told the company much beyond that I preferred earlier pickup windows when they were available. They thought I was just tired of nights, and maybe that was part of it. But another part was knowing how quickly an empty stretch of road and one bored, unstable stranger can turn your routine drive into something you think about every time you see that highway on a map. I still take long drives by myself. I still like the quiet, but I use that quiet differently now. I don't drift mentally. I don't zone out. I watch the mirrors as much as I watch the lanes ahead. And if a car acts like that sedan did, I don't wait around to see if it gets worse. I change lanes, I change speed, or I change the entire route. You only have to learn once that some people don't see other cars as lives. They see them as pieces in whatever twisted little game they're running in their head.